5 years ago, the defendant, who you believed was your father, revealed a shocking family secret, that your mother cheated. And you are not his daughter. You and your sister are in court to prove him wrong. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Scales, you are a retired semi-pro football player and claim it was during one of your away games that Elisa's mother cheated on you with one of your teammates, and he is her father.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Scales, why do you believe Elisa's mother cheated?
In 1983, we had an away game in Pensacola, and I took Miss Williams with me, and we checked into a hotel, and I went to bed early because I worked that day, and it was a Friday. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, and Miss Williams is no longer in the room.
How long was she gone?
I can't say exactly how long, but I know it was at least an hour or two.
Okay.
Right.
So you believed at that moment that something was going on?
For sure.
And Elisa and Tanja, have you ever heard any of this?
Not prior to it coming up 5 years ago. I was 27 at the time. When I spoke with my mom, she had talked to him about the fact that he was questioning paternity of me. When I hung up with her, I had a conversation with him, and he told me that there were some events that he didn't really feel the need to discuss with me at the time, that it was a discussion that she wasn't supposed to share with me, and I spoke with my mom about it later, and she gave me more details of, what actually had occurred.
And you say this was just 5 years ago?
This was 5 years ago.
And up until that point, you had heard nothing?
Right. And 27 is not a good age for this to be brought up if he wants me to have balance in my life. That's a very critical time, I feel, in anybody's life at that age. In your late 20s, you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to figure some things out, and for that to be something thrown in the mix.
And my point is, if this was something that was so important to you, so weighed in on your heart, this is something that you should have said, right when she was born, or right when you found my mom said, hey, we're pregnant again.
The reason I didn't say anything is because I wanted to give this child a gift. The gift that I wanted to give her was not having to come to earth and question who her father was.
Well, that wasn't fair for me to have to question that at 27 years old.
I'm your parent. I'm not your friend. I'm not your associate. I'm a parent, and I have responsibilities and duties. I wanted to tell you at 27 because it's important for medical reasons, for moral reasons, that I let you know there's a question with your paternity.
And for medical reasons, it's important
from the beginning.
From the beginning.
I shouldn't have been put in this situation.
Your mom should have told you.
You're the one who brought it up.
Right?
So listen, when Elisa's mom said, okay, I'm pregnant, you had doubts from her birth?
Even before her birth.
Why is it all of a sudden you decided that you needed to share this?
This child had nothing to do with her mother leaving that room that night. So I didn't want her to suffer for the effects and the ramifications and repercussions of her mother's actions.
So, Mr. Scales, I want to understand whether you were clear with their mother. I have doubts as it relates to Elisa.
I wasn't clear because I didn't want to cause any commotion or dissension. I wanted everything to go as if it was normal.
Growing up, I was born at this time. It was never normal. There was always some tension about something.
I want to hear from your mother. Ron, could you please escort their mom into the courtroom? Yes. I want to talk to her.
Bernard, you are a liar.
Ma'am.
And you know you're a liar.
Hi, ma'am. Miss Williams, I just want to ask you right off the top, do you believe Mr. Scales has any reason to doubt that Elisa is his biological daughter?
It's no reason at all, Your Honor. If he was gonna doubt a child, he should doubt Tanja. When I had the affair with the person in question, when I met the
rest
person
my case, Your Honor.
in question, I didn't even have any kids from him.
You're admitting that this night in question, you did leave the room.
I did leave.
And you did have an affair.
I didn't have relations
What happened?
with him. I did go in his room and we exchanged numbers. I did have an affair with the person in question. I did.
So that
But
night
it
you
was
didn't have.
Not that night. It was after the fact. So that's why I said if you was gonna question a child, question that one, not the young one.
Do you remember Tanja already was she born
Oh, yeah,
then?
she was born.
So you believe when you all went to Pensacola together, Tanja was
Already
born?
born. Yes. She
No.
might have been 1.5 going
No.
on 2. When
They're 18
that
months
happened.
apart.
Tanja, what are you trying to ask your mother?
So is that why you didn't sign my birth certificate, or is that why
He never signed the birth certificate. I did put him on Elisa's birth certificate.
But is he listed on Tanja's birth
No,
certificate?
he's not. No, he's not.
That-
So,
which would bring.
So wait, does anyone have that birth
She was having an
certificate?
affair with me.
Does anyone have that birth certificate?
Can I?
Ron, let me see that.
Yes, ma'am.
He is not. Mr. Scales is not listed as father on her birth certificate.
Why not?
Now, she was born first.
That's correct.
Why didn't you list him on Tanja's birth certificate?
I really can't give you an answer why I didn't.
So I need to ask respectfully. You've admitted to one affair, and that was with one of his teammates.
Right.
Were there any other affairs, sexual relationships that would cause one or both of these young girls to have to doubt their paternity?
No.
Mr. Scales, do you have any other evidence?
I have 5 children, and all of my 4 other children beside Elisa have brown eyes like mine, and they look more like me. The guy in question has hazel eyes. Elisa has hazel eyes.
But
They're light brown. They're not hazel.
So you feel like she doesn't resemble you or your other children.
Correct.
But when you look at yourself in the mirror, Elisa, you do see yourself. You see your mom and your dad.
In my heart, I feel that he's my dad. I feel that I look like him. I feel that I have mannerisms like him.
In the case of Williams v. Scales, when it comes to 33-year-old Tanja Williams, it has been determined by this court, Mr. Scales, you are her father. The next result reads as follows. In the case of Williams versus Scales, when it comes to 32-year-old Elisa Williams, you are her father.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Look, I'm very pleased when I can give people the answers that they need. I was not a party to your relationship, so I don't know what happened. It sounds like there were some things that happened between the two of you that created some level of doubt in your mind, Mr. Scales. And that's a tough thing to have to talk about with your child. Mr. Lee, you and your siblings claim the defendant was not fathered by your dad, Charles Lee Sr., a former professional football player and 2-time Super Bowl champion who sadly passed away 10 years ago. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Patrick Lee, you are tired of the plaintiffs denying that you share the same dad, and today's DNA results will prove your case that football star Charles Lee Sr. was in fact your father. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
What did you know about your mother's relationship with Charles Lee Sr.?
My father used to come by the house all the time,
You've known him all your life.
all my life.
It wasn't revealed to you at 10 or 12 that
No,
this
ma'am.
is your father.
No,
You've
ma'am.
known him since you were born.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know that he was a football star, a Super Bowl champion? Did you know these things about his life?
In the beginning, I didn't know. People would come up to me and tell me, you know, your father is.
Excuse me, if you
your
wait
father,
a minute. If that's he had you all your life and you didn't know and you was hanging out with him, oh, my father was the type of person he
As
would
I was
tell
saying, Your
you
Honor, before,
about the story.
if you were
He'll
asking
tell
my
you.
question,
My father,
Everybody
in
who
Albany
he
know
is.
my father.
So if you his son, you don't know, you didn't know at first?
You didn't know?
So, Mr. Charles Lee Jr., your father died 10 years ago. Why come to court now?
Well, actually, Your Honor, my father died 10 years ago, but my mom just passed away 9 months ago. My mom died September the 24th of 2015.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, and we were sort of estranged from Patrick after my father had died. And there was never a blood test done.
Okay, I want to hear from Mr. Lee. Why is it that you feel like they're questioning this now?
I have no clue. If you ask me, it may be having to do something with the will or just anything going on within our family. I don't know.
He never really looked like us, and people, even in the own family, would always say to him, and I felt bad sometimes when they would say to him, "Oh, Tinky ain't your father," or "You got that wrong." And he ended up coming to live with my mom. My mother and father, when I guess he's about 11 or 12 years old, his mom he was giving her problems or something. She dropped him off to my father. Basically, my father was renovating a house or something. He stayed down in that house down there until my father had the courage to go home to tell his wife that his outside child had been dropped to him. And when my mother found out, she told him to go get him. He is a child.
Earlier in your testimony, you mentioned the obituary, and I want to understand that. If you take a look, it says Charles Lee Sr. died peacefully, and he's survived by 4 children. And there are 4 children mentioned.
Yes.
And then there's an additional line, also survived by Patrick Lee of New York.
Yes. Yes.
And that was an error.
But wait a minute. No, it wasn't an error. Everybody did not know that my father had outside children.
Listen, everybody that just looks at this screen can understand why the writer wrote it that way. Now, I wish they would have consulted me because I could have given them better verbiage.
Right. Well,
And then they wouldn't seem like, and also these people. Because that's what it reads like.
Well,
intentionally or
we
not.
didn't do that intentionally.
No, I don't believe you did.
At all.
Now, speaking of the fact that you have to figure out how to list outside children, there is another child in question that was born outside of your parents' marriage. I'd like to ask you, when did you find out that Charles Lee Sr. was your father?
When I was 6 years old, I walked in on my mother basically having sex with my father. Mother brought me to the side and told me that that was my real father.
Oh my goodness. Did you all ever ask your father about Kyle?
I got on the phone and I called my father. He told me, hell no.
So he told you Kyle was not his biological child. Did you grow up having a relationship with him?
From 6 to 12, like, he was coming to get me, taking me out places and stuff. Like, he would give me school clothes and stuff. Like, he was there for me, basically, that I know of.
Is Charles Lee Sr. on your birth certificate?
Oh, man. I only got evidence that my birth certificate on my stepfather signed.
Let me see that, sir. So listed on your birth certificate is your stepfather's name.
Yes.
And until 6 years old, you thought that was your biological father until your mother told you.
Yes. They had a parade for my father when they named the field after him. He got his own field in Albany. I was there mostly older folks.
And when he was that,
But you
we
never-
didn't even know he was there.
You
He
never
didn't-
came up and addressed the family, you just went. Now, in order to determine if Kyle Lane is the brother of Charles Lee Jr. and Carla Lee, we performed a DNA siblingship test, and these are the results. In the case of Lee versus Lee, it has been determined by this court that Charles Lee Jr. and Carla Lee are related to Kyle Lane.
Thank you.
Do that.
Mr. Lewis, you say you've always known the defendant is your father and say his paternity denials are mere excuses as to why he was not there for you. You hope today's results put an end to this 44-year-old mystery. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister, you claim that years of doubt have given you reason to believe that you are not his father, but you may know who is. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
You are ready to prove your case today. Mr. Lewis, how has Mr. McAllister's denial affected you?
Well, growing up in South Central Los Angeles, you know, it was tough not having a father there, you know, knowing that you have one, you know, just different things that went on through my life that, you know, not having a man there to answer different questions, you know, it made things a lot tougher for me coming up, you know, but thank God that everything worked out.
So, Mr. McAllister, can you tell the court, what was the nature of your relationship with Mr. Lewis's mother?
Me and Miss Lewis, we attend the same high school together, and I knew her as a casual friend. However, the young lady that I was dating at the time, we either had our differences or whatever, and somehow me and Mrs. Lewis hooked up for an evening. And never talked to her from that point on.
So what did you hear about the relationship, Mr. Lewis?
Well, with my mom, you know, because the type of woman she was, she didn't want to allow the turmoil from that affair interfere with my life. But as a woman, we had to move on.
What did she say specifically?
She let me know who he was as a father. She had a picture of him. She gave me this picture, you know, with his, you know.
So was this some defining moment in your life when your mother said to you, I want to tell you who your father was, or was this always just...
No, it was clear, yeah.
It was clear?
It was clear, yeah. When I found out, yeah, when she told me.
And so when you got this picture and you had the name, and did you ever say, I want to look for him? Where is he?
Yeah, at that point in my life, I definitely wanted to know who he was. I was roughly probably a junior in high school, so I had a lot of things going on that I had already made it that far without a father. So, I mean, it would have been nice to know who he was, but at that point, I still had business to take care of. So it was, you know, it's kind of a bittersweet situation. I wanted to know, but I was kind of, you know, moving on with my life.
So she gave you the picture of him when you were in high school?
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Okay, so Mr. McAllister,
Yes,
all of this time, Mr. Lewis says it wasn't until high school that he even got a picture of you from his mother. All this time, you never knew you potentially had a son?
No, ma'am. I traveled to Los Angeles back in '81, and I ran into a relative of the family. And this individual told me that their relative had my son. And I got the information, and I called Mrs. Lewis, and I asked her, do we need to talk about something? And she said, no. I said, what about your son? What's going on there? I heard X, Y. She said, his dad is dead. I said, his dad is dead? She said, yes, his dad is dead.
Well, I have to ask you this. Why, if you were told definitively that his father had passed away by his mother, why are you now making these gestures, trying to connect with this young man?
Because of a credible friend of mine that I dated for years told me that there was a gentleman that was looking for me, saying that I was his father. And my thing is, whoever's looking for me that's saying that I'm their father, I need to talk to this person. So that's what I did. My thing is, again, like I said, before I leave here, within myself, I just need to know the truth.
This is such a mystery. So at the point when his mother said his father's passed away, you move on.
Right.
10 years later, someone you're dating and someone you trust, someone you feel like
Yes,
wouldn't
Your Honor.
lie to you says,
Yes, Your Honor.
there's a young man saying you're his father.
Yes, Your Honor.
So then you revisit this issue that you had put to bed for 10 years because you thought the door was closed.
However, directly to the son this time.
So when he reaches out, Mr. Lewis, what do you think? Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I remember it.
What happened? Take me back to that day.
It was bittersweet because I totally felt that he came around because things in my life were good. You know, me playing football, I had some scholarship offers, and it's like I heard more from him in that span than I had in the 16 years of me living. So that's why things to me kind of seem fishy. Like all of a sudden, now that you have a son and he's doing well, now you're picking up the phone. Because like I say, where we're from, it's tough for us not to know who we're, you know, it's really tough because it's such a small community, you know, and I believe in my heart, I know my mother wouldn't lie to me, you know, when she told me who he was. I'm sure he knew. That's why he didn't quit, continuing to try. You know what I'm saying?
When it comes to 44-year-old Jermaine Lewis, it has been determined by this court. Mr. McAllister, You are the father.
Thank you, Your Honor.
What are you feeling in this moment, sir?
I feel grateful and gratitude that now I know the truth. If I had known he was my son, a fleet of elephants wouldn't have been able to keep me away from him.
What do you feel, Mr. Lewis? Can you tell your dad?
I mean, it's I'm willing to do, you know, whatever it takes. We can definitely try to make it work, you know. But I mean, I'm a different person because of my situation, you know,
Absolutely.
what I've been through. So, and I can't apologize for that, you know, from what I've been through.
Oh, you have no, as far as I'm concerned, you have no apology. You were the innocent person. There's nothing for you to apologize to about.
I have to say this before we go. I want you to understand, because I feel the wall that you've put up, and I see why you did it. You know, I say this all the time. You either become the father you never had, or you become the father you never had.